Welcome back to the podcast. So, here on the podcast, episode 8. I know, that's hard to believe already, right? So, here's what I'm thinking for episode 8. So, as you read the title, you're very correct about that. So, the podcast is just starting. So, this is the one time where on the podcast you don't actually have to follow my rules for once as a one-time thing. Isn't that great? Ain't that wonderful? So now anyway. So now last night's episode, which many of you had seen, tonight's episode of the podcast, Blast of Strangeness. So now here on this episode of the podcast, so I'm gonna go right back to where we left off last night. So, like I said, I did have the alien encounter abduction happen to me when I was 12 years old, at the time when I was living in a 1970s mobile home trailer that was a rental property at the time when it had happened. So, now, now, I also have went through this thing to where when I was in high school, I had a very bad educated mentor, teacher figure person. Two, actually, who were horrible. Then there was another teacher just like them who was just as bad. A male teacher figure. And there was also the horrible assistant principal. He wasn't very nice at all. Now, the two nice people were the nice lady and the librarian lady. She was nice. So. But then again, she wasn't like the others. The nice teacher lady, she was actually really nice. The teacher's aide lady, yeah, the teacher's aide lady, she was really nice. And then the what do you call it, other lady? The librarian lady, she was actually really nice too, but everybody always said that she was like really horrible. She wasn't horrible. Hello. Hi. So anyway, this librarian lady, she was really nice too, but everybody always assumed that she was horrible. Well, not being mean, but in that job for several years, dealing with some horrible other students and dealing with some other horrible faculty members, I could see why at times where people could think she could be not very nice. I see that. And not to be mean, but if that was me in that job, I'd probably be like the same exact way, you know? So anyway, so now, the one nice lady, you know, the teacher's aide lady, she was really nice. There was one time when I was going through something to where a relative was not doing very well, who was very sick, who did end up passing away. I'm good, how are you? So anyway, I had a relative who ended up passing away at one point when I was still in high school, and unfortunately, the main educated mentor lady, teacher figure, she was horrible to me. And then I actually talked to the teacher's aide one day. I told her what was going on with everything. I explained it. I also explained how the educated mentor teacher figure lady and the teacher's assistant, were both not very nice to me at all. So the teacher's aide actually had to go and say something to the actual teacher lady. And then she wasn't horrible to me for, about a week or so, and then started in again. I thought to myself, you got to be kidding me. Why are you treating me this way? When I've done nothing to you, you're supposed to be educating me. But instead of doing that, all as you're honestly doing is just treating me horribly. Hang on one second. All right, I'm back. So anyway, this woman was so horrible to me. It even got to the point to where I actually did not go in for a couple days one time after all this. She did not like that one bit. She literally had nerve to literally call my phone one day and scream at me for not showing up. Well, how could I show up? I was dealing with a very sick relative who had passed away, so I couldn't exactly show up at the same time. But now she seems to think I could. Oh, and then, she was nice to me slightly a couple days later when I did show up. That was it. Other than that, she was never very nice to me. Oh, now the other one, the teacher's aide lady, oh my lord. Was she horrible or what? Yeah, she was so horrible. She was actually worse than the actual teacher lady. Oh, she literally had nerve one day when I finally said something to her about how when she was being horrible to me. I finally asked her if she would just stop and knock it off because I was tired of it. She literally had nerve to go to the assistant principal, told him that I was horrible to her. So she turned around and played the role of the victim. I thought to myself, you've got to be kidding me, lady. Wow. Are you serious? So the assistant principal, he walks in, takes one look at me. I knew it was coming. Oh, I knew he'd show up. I had that feeling. He walks in, takes a look around and goes, oh, well, what's the problem here? I said, oh, well, the problem here, you want to know to answer your question? I said, I'll tell you the problem. The problem, I don't see where there's a problem here. I said, maybe it's some of the help that was hired around here. Maybe the problem. I said, has anyone ever thought about that? He just looked at me, walked away, and didn't say 2 words. I said, that's what I thought. The actual teacher lady, she's just looking at me in disbelief. I just looked at her and I said, I also told you I could handle the assistant principal. I'm not scared of him at all. She thought I was. But in reality, I wasn't. So I honestly do not know, where she actually thought that. Then again, she was also a complete wacko. Besides. Oh, so then one year, she was being really horrible one year. And then all of a sudden, something happened one day to her. She wasn't being horrible to me one day because I wasn't in the same room at the time. I was actually out and about taking care of some other stuff. So apparently, while she was being horrible to another student, she miraculously broke her leg suddenly. This teacher. I said, interesting. Boy, it was a nice break without her for a while at school. But I knew right away it wouldn't last. I said to myself, unfortunately, this nice break's going to end very quickly. Watch. Oh, yeah, well, it was nice for a couple weeks. I think 2 weeks. And then she was back. I thought to myself, oh, right, there goes the break. But mind you, this woman would come in every day wearing high designer clothes from a very expensive store brand. And she also would literally come in wearing her high designer clothes and acted like she was better than everybody else when coming to find out in reality she actually wasn't. She was actually living a double life. Oh, yeah, that too. And also, she was literally acting like she was better than everybody else, living a double life, wearing high designer clothes. And then it literally got to the point to where she literally could thought that she could do like whatever she wanted to do. Oh yeah, so she thought that getting away with it was always going to work. Oh well, apparently it didn't end up working one time. She thought just because her family owned a business in another state that she would travel from. Yeah, she thought by that was the high status of her family. And I hate to tell you this, but the first time when she actually got her first paycheck at her teaching job, that's how she was able to afford her high designer clothes. Other than that, she could not afford them. And then she would still act like she was better than everybody else, even though she wasn't. And the sad part is, she was like that with a lot of her students for some reason, me included. And her teaching methods were horrible, by the way. I'm just going to throw that out there, too. And it also got to the point with her to where she literally ended up having to, what was that thing that ended up happening? Yeah, her breaking her leg was actually her own fault, believe it or not. Yeah, I know. So me and a friend of mine at the time, we were just happy that she wasn't there for like 2 weeks or so. But I mind you, this teacher lady and the assistant teacher would literally have nerve to sit there and talk about how they didn't really like the librarian lady, how they thought that she was horrible, that she was all these things. I said to myself one day, I said, wow. I said, only if the librarian lady could hear this and know exactly what they actually say about her. I said to myself, that would be interesting. I would love to tell her, but I'm not going to do that for a few reasons. One, I'm not going to do that because it would basically be where they would lie about it and then sit there and bitch at me afterwards for it. So that's why I chose not to do that. So I did not feel like hearing the wrath to either one of them too. So I said, you know what? Don't do it. I mean, I wanted to as much as I did. I didn't. I thought it would be better. But sometimes, though, I think the librarian lady actually knew exactly what they would say about her. Oh, I'm pretty sure she knew. So anyway, this male teacher one day literally has nerve. While I was running an errand around the school for a different teacher. So he literally has nerve to follow me around for quite a while. So I finished running the errand that I had run for a different teacher lady because there was a thing that she needed to be brought in for her classroom for like the next day, and that thing takes more than one person. So I helped the one lady with that. So he literally had nerve to follow me back into this classroom of where the main lady taught. And he looks at her, makes up this story that never happened. And then this moron of a bad educated mentor lady, teacher figure, she made me write an apology letter to him the next day when he sat there and lied to her. So obviously she was a complete idiot, if you ask me. I said to myself, wow. Well, that's like one day, freshman year, is when this took place. Then, another time took place to where she wanted us to do this dumb assignment one day to where, something about some career choice in life or whatever. I thought, okay, that may be interesting. I'll give it a try, to see. And, I put something on there, something I thought would be interesting to do. I thought to myself, I thought I had put, independent low budget horror filmmaker or slash director or something like that. I put that. She literally sat there and had nerve to ridicule me over that and said it wasn't a real career and that, you don't have the equipment for that, so why would you do that? I said, I didn't say right now. I said, maybe someday I may choose to do that. That's all I had said, like a low-budget independent horror film. I would like to do something like that, maybe. And then she literally decided to act like that was not a real career. I said to myself, wow, lady, you're an idiot. She was an idiot. But I can't believe she sat there and had nerve to literally sit there and act like that's not a real career. I said, excuse me. I said to her, that's how some of the biggest names in movies, biggest names in directors like Wes Craven, John Carpenter, people like that. I said, Blumhouse. I said, people like that have made low-budget independent horror films. That's how they have some of the biggest names within the movie industry as of today. She looked at me like I was making that up. So then, 10th grade was horrible with her. She was more mean. 11th grade, she was very horrible to where it got worse and worse. 12th grade, it got to the point where, I finally snapped back at all of them. Those two included. They did not know what to say to me. That's for sure. After being snapped back at. And I said, you know what? This is what you two get for treating me like this every day. Horribly. When, for 4 years, I have done nothing to you. I said, like I said, you're supposed to educate me. And instead of doing that, you want to sit there and be horrible to me while you're trying to educate. Not going to happen. So then finally graduation came and I was so relieved to be done with them. That's like she thought I was going to come back after. Not. But boy, when she found that out, I literally thought she was going to fall to the floor when she found out that I wasn't coming back. I just looked at her. I said, maybe it has something to do with your teaching methods. Maybe that's why I ain't coming back. Boy, she just looked at me and I was waiting for her to say something. I just looked at her. I said, go ahead, say something. I dare you. She didn't say one word. She said, all you always want to do is argue with me. I said, excuse me, correction. No. That's the other way around. You've got it wrong. You always want to argue with me. And other students have seen it. You sit there and do it right in front of them. She did not like the sounds of that when I spoke up. Then again, I didn't care. It was time someone spoke up to her and put her in her place. But she did not like that. Her authority, when finally got snapped back at because of the way those two were. They would literally both sit there and try to play the victim when clearly, obviously, I don't know why they were trying to play the victim when they were the ones acting horrible in this situation. But literally having to act like that. And the sad part is, these people are allowed to be educated mentors. I don't think so. Now, if anyone has any questions or anything, please feel free to email the podcast and 3 questions will get picked, and you will get answers, and I will read them right on here. So now, does anyone have any questions about anything I had just said? If so, please email the podcast for that, and you will get an answer. Oh, then, then one day, she literally thought that she was going to try to get control back of this situation, but they both sat there and tried everything they could think of. Not one thing worked. They didn't know what to do when I gained control over the whole entire situation, over both of them. Oh, they didn't like it. Huh. Yeah, well, you know what? I don't care if they didn't like it. Honestly, they actually deserved what had happened to them like that. It was their own doings and their own fault. And then try to sit there and blame everybody else. But yet, they would sit there and talk about other students who were not there on certain days. In front of other students. One day they were talking about a student in front of me and a friend of mine who were both students also at the time. She was sitting there talking about other students right in front of us. I said to myself, wow, lady, and you're allowed to be a teacher figure? Or you're allowed to be a teacher figure, lady, person? I don't think so. Yeah. Funny thing is, she literally did not have a right to be that horrible. But, oh, she got away with it, of course. Well, you know what? By the time I graduated, I was just glad to be done with her. That lived through that horrible memory of her. So, obviously, this did make an impact on me, because if it didn't, would I be on here talking about it now? No. But now, let's look at something. She was one of those people who actually had nerve to say to me that I would never amount to nothing in life. Well, you know what? Look at me now. Look who has 500 and some subscribers. She don't. That's for sure. So, yeah. Apparently, I did amount to something in life, actually. Unlike her, who always said I would never amount to nothing. Well, you know what? She was actually dead wrong about that with me. She was always wrong. I just literally did not care for how, when I would literally have to snap at her, or snap back at her, how she would try to play the role of the victim, when she was the one being horrible. That's what I'd like to know. Why was she doing that? She did that because that's just how she is. And then, anyway, then a friend of mine graduated like a couple of years, like 2 or 3 years after I did, thank God. My friend couldn't even wait to be away from her. Well, one day, I looked for my friend one time on social media, found my friend on social media, started messaging my friend, and I'm like, yo, hey, you graduated finally, and you're no longer dealing with that? She went, yep. I said, oh, sweet. That's what I thought to myself, you know. So then, my friend says to me one day, yo, so where are you around at these days? I said, oh, nearby. So, I found out later that my friend there literally lived around the corner from me at the time, which I did not know that. So I was like, yo, we need to talk. I was like, you stopping over? Or here's my address, stop over, or I'll stop over to your house, either way. So we met up, me and my friend. We talked. She says to me, she goes, oh, I couldn't wait to get away from her. I said, oh, let me guess. She was horrible to you, wasn't she? I said, she was horrible to you like she was horrible to me. My friend took one look at me and went, yep. I said, that's all I need to know. Then my friend's mother, at the time, told me a similar story. And so my friend's mom told me the whole entire story one day about this educated mentor teacher figure lady. And then I said to her, I said, wow, that's how she was with me too, for no reason, and others. She said, oh yeah, I know. She had nerve to talk about other students. And she goes, do you remember the time when she broke her leg? I said, yes. I said, yeah, it was a good break from her for the 2 weeks, but I knew it wouldn't last. She goes, the funny thing is I knew that too, it wouldn't last. I said, oh yeah, it was horrible when she came back, you know? She goes, I kind of figured it was. She goes, I just had that funny feeling. And then I said, you want to know the sad part is? When the teacher broke her leg, I didn't feel any sympathy for her. Yeah, I mean, I know that sounds mean, and I know that sounds wrong, but she was so horrible to me. That's why I did not have any sympathy for her. And now, I sat there and literally acted like I had sympathy for her, even though I didn't. But then again, I don't know if she ever knew that. Don't know, don't care. That's for sure. Then, so finally, it all, like I said, everything finally had come to an end slightly after. But obviously, it made a horrible impact in my life and in my friend's life and all the other students that she was like that to. The funny thing is, if she wasn't like that, would I be on here talking about this now? No. So therefore, it made some type of impact, wouldn't you say? So then, all of a sudden, so now, moving on from that. Now, a lot of you may or may not know this, but years ago, I had lived in this old 1970s mobile home trailer that was a rental. At the time, the landlord actually owned the property. He owned this property and the mobile home trailer that was on the property and the house that was next door to it. I guess it was all both part of his property, the way it was set up. So, I had lived there for a long time. I mean, I don't live there anymore, which is fine, but I did not know this at the time when I had moved in there, that I was going to have all these very weird experiences moving in there. It all started one day when we had just moved in there, right? So we pull into the driveway. We get out of our car, we start bringing our stuff in, and then we turn the lights on because, it's during the day. All of a sudden, with the lights on in there, it was quite dark. And I was like, whoa, that's strange. Why would it be so dark in here like that? And, it was obviously an older mobile home trailer, a 1970s. It had one of those old electrical panel breaker boxes with those knobs, with those, some type of like circle knobs looking things. So then, eventually, it was eventually replaced with a brand new one a couple of years after we had moved in there. And with a more modern one that was more updated, that had actual flip breakers, like most of them today. Every night around the same time, that thing, for some reason, every night around the same time, it sounded like somebody would throw a quarter at it, and then all of a sudden the breaker would flip off, and it would make this strange noise. So I couldn't figure that out for like the longest time, what was wrong with it. We had it checked. It kept checking out fine, that everything was fine with it. We were like, okay, well, that's strange. So then, one night, I'm watching TV in the one bedroom that was mine at the time. I had the bedroom door slightly opened because I knew that at one point I was actually going to have to get up and go into the bathroom, to go to the bathroom, obviously. So I had the bedroom door slightly opened. I was watching some kids' TV show at the time. I think it might have been Hey Arnold or something. I think it was some episode to where they get like a new teacher or something at the school on the show. So next thing you know, All of a sudden, I hear someone say, "Hey, turn off the TV." I look, I'm like, "What?" I look out in the hallway, I'm like, "That's weird, nobody's there. Why would I hear that?" I thought that was strange. That was very, very strange, actually. So weird things like that would happen there all the time. Then, what I actually had ended up finding out about that property is that years later, after I had moved out of there, that property literally ended up, which I did not know this at the time, years ago, it used to be an old cemetery. And then eventually, it was no longer a cemetery. And that's when the mobile home, that 1970s mobile home trailer, was placed onto that property. And then one night, now mind you, I live far away nowadays, you know. So one night, I have this dream that I'm over there at that property, and all of a sudden, in this dream, I see the ground start to break open from like some type of earthquake or something, you know. So there's an earthquake in this dream of mine, and all of a sudden, I see the ground, that ground at that mobile home trailer, that 1970s rental, start to break open. This figure appears out of this hole, looks right at me, comes into where I live now, into my home, into my bedroom, right up to my bed, right up to my bed, right up to my face, and just looks at me and says, "I'm here, and I'm the one that's been causing all these weird experiences that you kept having when you lived there." I thought, wow. See, I always thought that place was actually haunted. Come to find out, it was. So then, I wake up and I'm like, whoa, that was creepy. I mind you now, after I had moved out of that property, I would often drive by there several times to see if anybody was living there. People were living there for quite a long time. And then one day, I drove by there recently, like a couple months ago. A couple months ago, I drove by there, and that mobile home, that 1970s mobile home trailer, is no longer there. It's gone. And it's all overgrown now. And I said, wow, hard to believe at one time that was there. Wow. So, another time living there, when I was about 12 years old or so, I actually had an alien abduction encounter experience there too. Oh yeah, that did actually end up happening. It's also I talk about that in other episodes of my podcast, to where how that all happened and had went down. So, the short version of it is, I was abducted by these aliens one night, and they dragged me off the couch that I was sitting on in the wintertime, and they embedded this big blue deep stone into my foot, to my big toe. It was so deep, and oh, did it hurt. It even hurt coming out. So then, all of a sudden, next thing you know, they literally end up putting me back onto the couch like nothing had happened. So I'm back on the couch like nothing happened. And I was like, whoa, now that was strange. Well, then again, I mean, the name of the podcast is Blast of Strangeness. And I can also tell you that even though that did happen, I was just glad that it was done and over the next day. And boy, when that big blue stone came out, it hurt. My big toe hurt for quite a while after that. But I was just glad it was out. And now, I can also spot a scam from a mile away too, which that's in other episodes on my podcast as well, where I actually do talk about that. So anyway, thank you all for taking the time to actually join me here on the podcast. It was nice to see all of you. Also, be sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell. That way you'll be notified every time there's a new video. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. I will see you all in the next video, or I will see you all in the next podcast episode. Bye.